Okay, everyone, thank you for joining. And yes, once again, welcome everyone to what appears to be a very unusual format for PSA Ethnopolitics Specialist Group meeting of a roundtable rather than a webinar. And particular thanks to Lucia Cianetti, who has organized this to showcase the project Multicultural Cities jointly with her collaborators from across Europe. So one of the central aspirations of these webinars is to discuss the research in progress and help our researchers to frame and they talk about their ongoing projects for a wide audience. And I'm glad to see participants from across Europe, as I can see from the registration side, joining us here. So welcome everyone. And what this discussion will be looking at today has been framed by the project that Licia has been running with help of Leverhulme Trust, whose support we, I think, all gratefully acknowledge here, And as Ethnopolitics Specialist Group of PSA, we're happy to welcome you all to this meeting and facilitate this discussion. So I will pass the microphone to Licia and the team, and I'll come back in towards the end of this conversation and turn off my microphone and camera. Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Timofey, for helping organizing this, and thank you for everybody for being here. What we will do is that I will start with a very short introduction of the project, and then Andres and Alexandre that worked as artists as part of the project will also give their introduction, and then we'll invite our three guests, Alina, Poser, Amina Das, and Alex Herrero, to give their thoughts and comments about the project in general, but also about interdisciplinary collaborations and their experiences with those. So I will try and I will share the link for the webbook on the chat. Just in case anybody in attendance hasn't had a chance to look at the book, and then I will share my screen to. Sorry, I keep admitting people, so I get interrupted. I'll share my screen to show what it looks like. Here you go. So this is what people see once they enter a website. They should be able to download the EPUB. I haven't done that, so I'm not sure how it works, but it should work. And this is the product of a collaboration that started in 2019 as part of a research project funded by the Leverhulme Trust. And the original aim of the research was to investigate the effects of the economic crisis of 2008 and the austerity that followed on the way cities around Europe govern different. So I'll come back to this question and how I'd posted at the beginning and how it changed over the course of this collaboration. But anyway, the original plan was for me to do a number of fieldwork trips to the 4 research cities, so Birmingham, Lisbon, Turin, and Riga. During each of these trips to meet up with the 4 artists I was collaborating with to discuss the cities and walk around and in a way do what I thought would be a sort of shared ethnography or ethnographic dialogue of their cities. And that was a way also for me not only to to compensate the fact that I do not live in any of those cities, but also to add other points of view and visions to the project, which I thought was important before starting this project. It became more important because between writing the project and starting the project, I had a child, so my kind of fieldwork plans suddenly shrank a little bit. And then the pandemic hit, and so the fieldwork pretty much disappeared. So we ended up meeting in person to do one of these walks, or in the case of Alexandre, a very long drive, only once in 2019. And then I was stuck in London, everybody was stuck in their own cities, and the collaboration moved entirely online. So the way it worked was that I sent the 4 artists a short text, so which is a version of the chapter introductions that you will see here, that then where we worked after the artists responded. So they would receive the text, they think about that, like we would have a chat online when needed, and then they will send their contributions to the project. So this is the result of this exchanges, this 3 chapters. The first 2 chapters were thought and planned before the pandemic hit. In the middle of preparing the second chapter, that's when the pandemic started. And so the 3rd chapter that was supposed to be in the original plan about nativism became about crisis again. And we changed the way we looked at it, also because it was very difficult to think about the previous crisis, the 2008 crisis and austerity in the midst of a new crisis without talking about that openly. So while this was less interactive than I had imagined before the pandemic, this ongoing conversation played an important role in the project. So as I said, the original question was formulated around the idea of crisis and the effects of the 2008 financial crisis. But from the very beginning, even before the COVID-19 crisis struck, the 4 artists, all of them responded to my kind of questions and my little text with work that challenged the implicit temporality that that was hidden in my question, hidden even from me to an extent. So, because when we say this is a crisis, and then we ask what are the effects of this crisis, even if it's not our intention and it wasn't my explicit intention, we implicitly draw a line between what happens during a crisis, which is exceptional, it needs investigation, it needs emergency response, it needs to be tackled, and what happens before and after a crisis, when the crisis ended, that is normality. Which, might be not ideal, but it's better than crisis. So these are the implications of posing the question in those terms and posing the question around crisis. But then the work that Andres, Alexandre, but also Farwa and Galas were not here today, did in response to that, pointed to different timelines. They were longer, they were more complicated, they were made of cycles and of repetitions, of continuity, so things that remain the same even through crisis. So when Alexandre, in one of his audio pieces for the book, said, I've been living in austerity time since I remember, it becomes obvious what also comes from the work of the other artists, that kind of crisis and the definition of crisis is very political. It's part also of the definition of what we normalize, what we make normal, we make acceptable. And so that must be recognized explicitly in a research agenda and a research project. Otherwise, even well-meaning research ends up hiding the experiences of crisis that do not conform to the official timeline of crisis. So this is what it's meant at the end of the webbook. So in the introduction to the last chapter, when I write that crisis cannot be thought of as a bolt from the sky that disrupts and troubles normality, but needs to be thought of as nested inside myriad other crises that we call normal. So this is just to give an example of one of the strong ways, there are also more subtle ways maybe, in which this interaction, this ongoing interaction with the four artists changed the project, which over time became more framed in terms of change rather than crisis. So asking what changes, what doesn't, and how and why some things change and some things do not. And so the crisis and the politics of crisis are part of the story, but then normality and the politics of normality are also an important part of that story. So this is the story of this collaboration from my perspective. So what collaborating with the artists did for me, for my research, and then I'll leave the floor to either Alessandro and Andres. We haven't decided on the order, so whoever wants to go first to say their side of this story. Who wants to go first?
I can go, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So hi everybody. My name is Alexander. But I go by many names, and lately I've decided to go with Aka Biru. Actually, it means also known as Biru. But as I was studying and making a lot of courses online with Brazilian people, when they saw the name Aka Biru, they immediately started to call me Aka. So I got a new name after that. This is an introduction for the being multicultural and what it is for me being multicultural. When Alicia brought that question to us, what has been happening to the multicultural cities, it was a huge thing for me. It put me into question myself in a lot of fields. If I can say that as the answer to that question, and that's what the latest work I've shared for the book as the last sentence, like I will let you know when I get there. This is like a metaphor where I try to question also what it is to be multicultural, and if actually in a socially and political, economical view, and cultural, obviously, if there is a city that has a balance in all those fields, and the people that live in the city, and actually the people that are the city, all feel considered as the individuals who we are actually. And also because I really don't know what it is in the end of this, and because of that I decided to share a video with you. But before that, I just wanted to leave an introduction. The video, I think, will tell you more than I could say in words this amount of time, because I have an easy way to go with words, and I can speak for days, actually. And it's not a metaphor. And I'll leave you with an introduction, and then I'll show you the video, and afterwards we can keep on going, of course. And if you have any questions, I think we'll have the chance to ask and go talk about it. The introduction is a funny one, because when Richard brought this question, it took me to a time I was living in London, and I'm at the moment in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And it was that question that brought me here. I'm here because I got a scholarship. I call it a bolsa de estudos. Yeah, some help with the studies. And so I'm here studying cinema. And I'm studying cinema because in the end of this work that I took as a research for myself also, I found out that this could lead, or what I was looking for was actually a way to make a movie. And my last proposition that is not present in the book, but is present as a process, is a movie called Logout. And Logout, actually, can I share the screen already? Show some things, okay. Share content, share screen, start broadcast. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go, sharing. So yeah, log out. This is one of the works. Can you actually see it? Let me know, because I don't see it.
Yes.
See you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. So this is one of the works that was part of it was present in the book. It already has another elements because it's a work in progress. And yeah, we can, yeah, just interpret as you wish. But for me, it has a lot of symbols here that represent what I was going through since that question. And yeah. So you have log out, and this is a presentation of the movie, the beginning of it, at least. So it says it's Portuguese. It says it's a project for a movie that was born in another video that is in the book, called Log Out, a wireless poem. And it says that log out is this, pardon, this character that is not defined, but is like a way or a state of being. And it contextualizes as like, yeah, we're living in pandemic times, crossing this enormous, gigantic crisis, financial values, identity, new era of information, counter-information, huge technology advancement, and threatening to democracy, like inequality, and a huge and systematic capitalization of everything that that you can make money with. And yeah, on the other side, this is mad scream is that it was like stuck in our throats, started like to burst, and we started yelling in every direction, and like against all isms that we can think of, and also just scream for individual liberty, and also identitary groups. And this is where Logout comes from. And it's based a bit, or is inspired also by a book, Temporary Autonomous Zone by Hacking Bay, a writer, anarchist, and poet, and controversial character also. But he wrote about this task, the Temporary Autonomous Zones, which is a place that is not mapped, so you can't figure out where it is. And it's also a temporary zone where you can experience yourself the most freely that you ever been. So Logout tells this story of this character or this way of being that and is like the last day or the moments before is manifest. The manifest is artistic, an artistic manifest, and this is going to happen in a pool that is called the bottom of the sky, which is a gene pool, and there was transforming the cybernetic hub. Then we here have just a poem that is features on the book, so I'll jump this, and yeah, I'll just show you this kind of the research that I've been doing. This is some of the characters, and in the pardon, but in the movie, featured in the movie, this is like kind of the indigenous people and also the kids which have this childish way of being, and this has been explored through some of the material I've been collecting as a sideways to the book. Not everything that I explored is in the book, of course, and I started to explore photography, knowledge of photography, and painting on top. This is one of the work in progress that I'm trying to keep on going and see where he leads me. And this is already the scouting of location. This is kind of the house from Logout, which is in Montemor Novo, down south of Portugal, outside of Lisbon. This is the gene pool, the thing where it's going to happen. Abandoned pool that we're going to explore and take it and make it as our studio. This is also some sites from it. The views and everything, and this is also some photos, like the analog photos. This is the original one where I started to paint it on. The first I just share, and yeah, we have a lot of these ones that I'm starting to paint on top of it and see what it comes to be, or what it turns out to be. And yeah, it was funny. I was received here in just gonna leave you in the black screen if you don't mind for a second, but I arrived the day before yesterday, and I was received by one of the school teachers, and a person called César de Moraes, a great cinematographer from Brazil that participated on the Cinema Novo, based on the Novo Cinema from France and the realism from Italy. And I'm staying at his house, and he just started to tell me this story about his name. That's saying Moraes is actually, his name is written with the E, but he starts with an I as original name, and the original name Moraes with an I is from Portugal. But the Moraes then went to Spain, and in Spain they all called the Morales. And then from Morales, they got back to Portugal, and they started to call him Moraes with an E. And that was the Moraes with an E that arrived in Brazil. And started to tell me also the story about how Brazil came to be, and the relationship, right, when the Portuguese were threatened by the French, and so they fled to Brazil. And actually, by fleeing to Brazil to recovery and not to lose Portugal, they asked help from the British. The British just said, "Okay, I'll help you, but if you let me explore also Brazil and sell things to Brazil, especially things like the infrastructure and things like that." And And then at a certain time, Portugal was already in a position that the Portuguese in Brazil exiled could go back. So they went back, but they left someone here, like Pedro, the son, just remained here in Brazil. But the father, Don João, left him with no money, and they started, okay, but this is no good. I'm staying here with no money and things like that. And people that had some money here started to feel threatened also, and left behind, and they started to think about getting their independence. So to lead it to this independence, they used someone also called the Tiradentes. The Tiradentes was this revolutionary guy. Also, they did like the bridge between these rich people that wanted to get the independence from Portugal, and they connected with the people. He ended up dead. He was beheaded, and these parts were like all gutted and sent to the places that he started this kind of syndicate mostly, and so people could see, okay, you can't mess with the Portuguese. This is what happens to you, and this also, of course, couldn't leave me like in the blank page. I was like, okay, but this is being multicultural. This is the origin of it, and that's why I wanted to share this with you. And just leave you with this as a question also, because I still don't know, and the stories are so complicated, so intrigued between them that it's difficult to know what it is, and that's why I turned to myself, in terms of searching the answers, not outside but inside of myself. And there's this old sentence from whatever my moment of inspiration that I had, that says it is in your intimacy, in your particular being, that you can find what is the most common to everyone and everything. So that's like an exploitation that I'm doing at the moment, and just I want to share this video and pass to the next one. Thank you. Says in truth, I didn't. I brought everything because I wasn't prepared. Express yourself by any means necessary. try.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Stop sharing. Okay.
Andres.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot. And Andres goes next.
Hello. Yeah, so my name is Andres Strokins. I would try to be brief. I'm a photographer, and I was exploring Riga during these few years in the context of multicultural cities. And for me, the first part was the problems, some contexts of my city. The problems are rooted in our Soviet past, and I tried to kind of spot these connections, visual connections in a city landscape. And then pandemic hit, and it was again the new crisis, new context, something that I never experienced, and it became my long-term project that I'm still working on. I will try to share some photos. Just a second. Do you see the images? Yeah. I started to document emptiness, loneliness, something that I felt inside me, and I didn't go far. I was walking in the same districts where I was born and where I go to like day-to-day activities. Something very familiar to me, something very mundane and normal, but in the same time very exotic, because something happened suddenly, and there was this apocalyptic feeling in the air, and big uncertainty where we are going now. I'll try to stop the screen sharing. I worked in a manner as I kind of always work. I'm a documentary photographer mostly, and I'm just trying to stay in the shadows and just quietly observe how things changes, and in this context of pandemic, a lot of things changed, and environment where we're living changes also our mindset. So this is something that I'm concerned about. It's just a question how long we will still be in this pandemic situation, but it feels like it will have long-term consequences. So that's briefly, that's it.
Thank you, Andre. Thanks a lot. So these were our introductions. And now I'll ask, I guess we'll go in the order that was a bit random order written in the program. So Elena will go first with the responses, ideas, thoughts, and then Amina, and then Alessa last. So Elena.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I have prepared a presentation just to, wait a second. I'm not sure if I'm able to actually show it. Oh my God. So I just try that. I think I can't share it with you because we don't use Zoom for teaching, so I have to take my system preferences. So I'm just going to do it like that. I think that's probably easiest. And so thanks a lot for having me. My name is Alina Fosa. I'm a senior lecturer in communication and media studies at Loughborough University. And in my response, I'm going to focus on the collaborative aspects of the project. I think the project as a whole is really fascinating. I think really rich. There's a lot to say about it, but I'm going to focus now on the artist-academic collaboration because this is something that I also feel most confident to comment on. I myself have been involved in several collaborations with artists. Linked to my PhD project, I did an exhibition with a visual artist on local responses to the EU external border. Then I was recently involved in a film project on Gulag memories, and what Licia probably knows best is that I was, like her, also involved in a Tate exchange project, a big multi-partner initiative called Who Are We, involving different universities and arts organizations and over 20 artists. Developing creative responses in relation to Brexit, questions of cultural identity, citizenship and belonging in the UK and in Europe, and actually linked to that project, Who Are We project, I, together with my colleague, Dr. Sarah de Jong, we wrote a critical reflection on artist-academic collaborations, trying to, what we saw as the black box of collaborations, to unpack that a little bit and also situate the collaborations more in an institutional context. So what I'm going to do now is just give you kind of a bit of an overview, some context to artist-academic collaborations, say reflect on what they're good at and what this particular project I think achieves very well, and also ask some more maybe thought-provoking questions for you to respond to. So if we think more generally about artist-academic collaboration, I think what we can see is in the recent years a multiplication of these collaboration, a rise of collaborations. We can see this at conferences, that also we are invited to submit creative contributions. We can see this in artists being hosted at universities, very much also projects like the one that you initiated, that you were part of, involving artists and academics working together. And if we think about why is this happening, then of course it's linked to the, especially in the UK, the impact agenda, the search for impact, for public engagement, universities having to justify what they do. They need to reach out to wider audience. So artist-academic collaborations are a good way of engaging audiences, wider public audiences. Another factor is the academization of the arts, that it's not just about the particular skills, artistic skills that artists have, but art, when we go to the museums, to exhibition, we can see that arts increasingly over the years has adopted a language of social sciences, of humanities, and it's about concepts, it's about ideas, and not just about something looking beautiful. And of course, and also there's an interest in innovative methods in academia, also art-based methods as well. But beyond these kind of more recent developments, what we can also see that there's certainly a long-standing mutual attraction between artists and researchers. And I think we see that in the project from the ebook, but also what Licia has reflected upon in the beginning, this kind of the inspiration that comes from academics and artists working together. What are academic collaborations particularly good for? If we look at the literature on the subject, I think we find a lot of positives, and I think probably two issues I want to emphasize here. On one hand, artist-academic collaborations are good for academics because they allow us to go beyond the written word. Often our research outputs are written, or we do conference presentation, but here this allows academics to expand the methodological toolbox and use different ways of expressing themselves. Or together with artists to communicate research in different ways. And secondly, it also allows for a democratization of knowledge production. It's not just academics producing knowledge, but it involves more actors in the knowledge production. And Maggie O'Neill has written about this kind of research collaborations allowing to loosen the knowledge power access involved in knowledge production. And often they're also allowed to offer representational challenges that are transformative for audiences. So often critical projects that we find with artist-academic collaborations. And what is particularly strong about this project? I think it really allows to generate a deeper understanding of culturally diverse cities. If we look at what research outputs can achieve, and particularly comparative research, I think that if we look at comparative research in social sciences, often it's relatively dry, it's relatively abstract, and doesn't capture really the dynamic character of cities. I think what you get here is a very rich, a very layered account of the cities, the changes that they have gone through, but also what it means, I think particularly so what it means to live in these cities. And you do that through different means, through poetry, through photography, through filmic accounts. So I think using these different media provides this richness, these rich insights into the cities and the perspective of its inhabitants. I think another thing that is particularly strong is because you're a team of artists and researchers working together, so you get a polyvocal account, something that you also emphasize in the description of the ebook, that it requires multiple eyes to really capture the complexity of the city, and I think that that is done very well through the artwork. And I was particularly impressed by Andres and also Farah's contribution in terms of how they document a city in crisis through photography, where you really, I think, particularly the COVID pictures of Riga, I found very strong. I think they communicate just in different ways of how the city has transformed at a visual level, but also the experiences of the city, of some places being abandoned, the restrictions being put forward with some bans, and you can't sit on the bench anymore, and things like that, I think, are very evocative in communicating what's happening in the city. And I think Alexandra's and Gala's contributions are particularly good at communicating the experiences of ethnic minorities and also migrants, and the resilience and the strength that they have. I think this you can really see on one hand the structural factors impacting on people, how they deal with crisis, how they deal with austerity, but also the strength there is documented by you and expressed by you through the artwork. It's not just a polyvocal account of cities, but it gives voice to particular people who are often not represented, or whose voices are often not so much represented. That is migrant and ethnic minority perspective through you as artists participating, but also the kind of subject that you choose then in your artwork. I think that's done very powerfully. And another thing that I found particularly strong that Alicia also mentioned now is how you add temporal depth to understandings of multiculturality and crisis through the lens of ethnic minorities and migrants and their perspectives, showing that the different layers to the city, different moves of migrants moving into the cities, different experiences of crisis that have accumulated and changed over time. I think that's conveyed particularly well. So this is in terms of what kind of knowledge we get about the multicultural city through the ebook. And the second aspect I wanted to comment on is the collaborative and dialogical approach of the project. And I think that's a particularly strong one. If we think about how impact is often defined by academics, it's a very unidirectional, very narrow understanding of impact, so that academics generate the knowledge and then they bring an artist on board that help them then to communicate the knowledge generated by them to a wider audience, or at least that's how REF, the Research Excellence Framework here in the UK, wants us to think about the impact. It's academics impacting on others. I think this method of an ethnographic dialogue, or dialogue in general, is a much more reciprocal one. One that is characterized by openness. And I find it very beautiful how the ebook itself really shows the valuing of dialogue. Of course, we only see the ebook as the result. We don't see the process that you have outlined a little bit in the introduction. But I think even in the ebook, as the output, you get dialogues in multiple forms, a dialogue between different contributions, between the text and the artist contributions, the visual contributions, and also within the artist contributions, you have a dialogue with some of the recordings of your, I think, car journey and your conversation with Alexander being recorded then for the ebook, and I think that that works really well. And also that you have the concluding reflection where everybody says something about their perspective. And that's also something we try to do as part of our Tate Exchange project, really, that we try to make dialogue open and to show actually these discussions that are happening between artists and academic, and see this as an output and insight in themselves. So what kind of critical questions do I have for you? I wanted to ask you two sets of questions. So the first set of questions in relation to the knowledge production, trying to situate it a little bit more. So I would be interested in hearing more about how you feel. So I think the ebook is really great in what it does, but how does it really sit within established structures of recognition within academia, but also the arts? So how do you actually translate this back into something that counts? Do you feel that actually that there is a pressure to do that? On one hand, one could say that using this innovative collaboration allows you to maybe access funding. It's seen as something that is attractive for funder. But if we look at structures of tradition within academia, careers, often they're built on different things such as publications, and these are the things that really count. And the same for artists. Is the collaboration with Licia something that you feel you can link your artistic practice to in a way that that you don't just do this as a side project, but that really allows you to also make it count for your own careers, if you think in these terms. The other question I have in relation to knowledge production is in relation to the audiences and the reception. And of course, this is probably a bit speculative. There's an assumption in some of the literature that collaborations allow us to widen our audiences, to communicate to a broader public. But how do we actually achieve that? And what are your plans to achieving that, to actually go beyond academia? Who actually are the ones who read the ebook and who are interested and attracted to it? Can we really achieve so much with these outputs? And how do we do it? So something I would also be interested in hearing. And then in relation to the method of ethnographic dialogues, I find the concept of ethnographic dialogues interesting, but I also had some questions in relation to the role of the artist within that dialogue. if we keep to the language of ethnography, are the artists informants or gatekeepers? Are they researchers, local researchers themselves? Are they all of this together? And I'm just thinking at conversations that I have with some friends who are artists or who do practice research, and often feel that their work is not so much taken seriously as research. So it's still, within these collaborations, it's still the academics who get to define what is research, whereas artist contributions are not seen so much as research in itself. So I was wondering what your response to that would be. I was also interested in challenges to academic perspectives within that dialogue, in that collaboration, but I think you already responded to that in your introduction. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing your responses.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Lots of questions. So Amina, do you want to go, and then we kind of chat about this all together?
Definitely. Thank you very much. And thank you to Licia and the team who put the ebook together and sort of arrived at this stage. And I'm honoured to be part of this discussion and conversation. Just a bit of an introduction to who I am. I'm a lecturer in politics at the Montfort University in Leicester, but I'm also a member of the Centre for Urban Research on Austerity, housed within the university. I see some of my colleagues here today in the audience, but I'm co-lead with a colleague on our centre's racialized inequalities theme. So we're really interested in how racialized inequalities map onto or intersect with austerity within the centre. In terms of my own research, I'm involved in critical Muslim studies, but I recently published a book on Muslim women's political participation, and I've also recently co-edited a book on countering Islamophobia in Europe, which stems from one of these collaborative academic and non-academic partner endeavors, and that was funded at the EU level. As part of that research, we did some field work with practitioners from across Europe to understand some of the best strategies in countering Islamophobia, and I think some of this could be transferable to the multiculturalism question. And part of this, we encountered and engaged with artists as our interviewees, to analyze some of the best practices they were engaged in countering Islamophobia. And I found this to be really interesting and really enlightening. So my own research has taken on this sort of angle. I'm looking at the way in which the arts can be used to counter dominant Islamophobic narratives. And I'm really interested in this idea of co-production of knowledge and the role of both the researcher and the artist in this process. Looking at the webbook, then, of course, I felt it spoke to much of my own research interests in the centre that I'm part of. The research interests, particularly when we consider the debates around sort of multiculturalism being dead, sort of Lenton and Titley's argument, the arguments they cover, and those around sort of nativism and the rise of ethno-nationalism. So instead of sort of going more broadly, I picked up some of the themes that really spoke to my own research and then tried to understand it, but also problematize and move forward with them. One of the images that really struck me in the book and really spoke to my own research interest was that put forward by Farwa Mouladina, where she includes an artwork by Aerosol Ali, Muhammad Ali, in Birmingham. And just to contextualize it, if you haven't read the book yet, it's a sort of dimly lit street art, graffiti type art in a part of Birmingham that has an image of Ilhan Omar, and it was done in response to Trump's go home comments to the Congresswomen of color at the time. And I felt that this, on the one hand, reflected that sort of global narrative of the sort of rise in ethno-nationalism, and I felt that came out so massively in this image, but it also reflected this continuous crisis that marginalized communities are experiencing within the city across the globe. And I found, I think it was Alexander's comments afterwards in his audio recording about this continuous notion and living austerity, living crisis all the time. And I felt that this image really spoke that. And also, and this is part of what inspires my own research in the area, it's a very accessible, emotive form of communicating some of these ideas that circulate within our own research. So I think as researchers, we have so much we can learn from artists going, and I think Elena's touched on it, going beyond our traditional modes of speaking about our research or writing about our research, having these more emotive, evocative forms of communicating the ideas we cover. So really, kind of coming to my research, I find that the image spoke to this idea of Muslim women's agency. And I think this is something Farwa writes about at the end of the book in her own description, about countering the image of the sort of submissive, orientalized woman. And this image potentially has so much power to do that. And I think that there's something there that we should be looking at. One of the things I found interesting was the idea that came up in Moladina's comments, but also more broadly throughout the book, this idea of no-go areas. And sort of, I then found myself asking questions of what constitutes a bad area or a no-go area. I was also reminded of the fact that channels like Fox, being exceptionally sensational as it is, did talk about Birmingham, if I remember correctly, as having these no-go Muslim-dominated areas. And I really saw this, for me, this spoke to the sort of the intersection of socioeconomic disadvantage with racialized inequalities that exist in the city. And maybe this is something that could collaboratively be examined further within the scope of the multicultural city. It also reminds me of a paper that was funded by Cura, published by Nadia Ali and Ben Witham, looking at racialized capitalism, Islamophobia and austerity, that I think speaks to some of the themes that come out of Farwa's comments, but also the sort of broader discussions. Another section I found really interesting, again related to my own research, was the image put forward by Farwa again around the hero narrative. And I thought it was really interesting the way in which sort of perchance the project has come into this sort of new crisis and the COVID situation. It's almost impossible not to. And I think the discussion around it talks about the place of marginalized individuals within the multicultural city, and that almost there's this understanding that the recognition of the migrant or the racialized individual within all of this, the COVID pandemic, we saw them having a role. And then I asked myself questions, and I thought of Suhaima Manzoor Khan's poem, "This is not a humanizing poem." And I was asking the question, do the marginalized or multicultural elements of the city, do they need to bring something in order to be respected? And I think, again, there's scope around, you know, how can we discuss that? And I would be really interested to understand sort of artist perspectives on the role and then the value that's sort of value-laden comments that come with all of that. And the example of the NHS I thought was really interesting. And on the one hand, I do think that the migrant community do prop up the British National Health system, but that's against a backdrop of kind of increasing neoliberalism and privatization. And there was a study published last year by BIMA, the British Islamic Medical Association, I think, in collaboration with others, that really talked about that in spite of this hero narrative, which I problematize in the sense that people were thrown to the front line, and it was, you know, almost like a warlike narrative, that these lives were potentially disposable, and often these were these racialized, socioeconomically disadvantaged individuals who'd faced austerity and racisms. But this study published by BIMA talked about the sort of levels of Islamophobia, sort of brings me full circle back to some of the stuff that I look at. And there's some alarming rates. So 81% of the 133 individuals surveyed felt that the NHS was racist. And that 57% had felt Islamophobia directly had limited their career progression. So on the one hand, we've got this sort of humanizing narrative that comes out in this sort of multicultural artworks. But at the same time, I think artists do this themselves, sort of problematizing all of that. And I'd be really interested to see sort of further developments. I felt that a lot of the, was it the Andres' comments around the sort of neither meat nor fish, the neither here nor there, the sort of diasporic woes, spoke to so much of what I encounter anecdotally and both in my research across Europe, working with marginalized communities. And also this notion of belonging, I would be really interested to see that developed even further, and how we could maybe problematize that, but also reframe and recenter some of that through these sort of academic artist based collaborations and challenging the dominant narratives that exist about who belongs and who doesn't, who is them and who is us. I think there's a lot of scope beyond all of this. I guess my questions very explicitly, yes, diversity and multiculturalism exist, but kind of I think you've already begun to significantly tease out a lot of those nuances, and I'd be really interested to see it continue and develop. And I think around the ethnic nationalism, I see that is only growing. And I looked at my own research in France, where it's almost like a race to the bottom of lowering standards. The presidentials are coming next year in 2022, and it's almost a case of who can be most against any sort of natural mixing that can occur, that does occur within the city, but who can demonize marginalized communities the most, the fastest, who can do it, you know, par excellence. I think that they do, and they set this barometer. And I see that only entrenching as we go forward, and that's compounded by the new crisis and the new austerity and the new financial cuts that this will inevitably bring about. So I think that there's room to grow this, to develop it further. I'd like to see it sort of continue after this book and have further discussions around it. I found it really enlightening. So I'm super glad that I got to read this, and I'm super glad I had the chance to speak with you all today. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Amina. So we'll go to Alessa. In the meanwhile, if people who are attending want to type questions, they can go ahead and type them. And then Alessa.
I'll try to be brief. So I'm Alessa Herrero. I'm a Black African human being that likes to express herself through arts. And I really do believe that sometimes what we do is just about circumstances, opportunities. So that's why what I am is a Black African human being, and what I do is eventually some arts. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity to read this book. I think that you made a very good and important job, and it's still a document. It's a documentation, and it's a beginning of course, there's a lot of things that can be developed more, but it's still already a documentation of, even if it starts from individual perspective, they represent the conditions of a lot of us. So when I first started to read to the web book, my first thought went to the description of the colonial city that Frantz Fanon bring to us in his book, The Wretched of the Earth, where wretched are where mainly racialized people, but of course, as we have already said, class is another very important element. So what is a colonized city, which is the structure of a colonized city, and according to the end of the colonization, is the city still structured in the same way or not? Even the cities that call themselves multicultural city. I am born in Rome, which is in Italy not the most multicultural, but still considered multicultural. And it happened that I live in Lisbon for 12 years, and it's another city that is considered very multicultural. But while I was reading through the book, and I was thinking maybe most in Lisbon, that it brings out around Europe this image of being multicultural, mainly for this relation with this past colonial past that they have, and this huge presence of people coming from the African diaspora. But I was thinking about the city and the way my knowledge and understanding of the city changed throughout these years that I'm living here, and how much the structure of the city is so colonial, and how some bodies belong and can participate at some point in some spaces of the city that can make the city called multicultural, but how long these bodies also stays in the city and how do they participate in the city. And then I was also asking myself, what does it mean a city to be multicultural? And I look at the city as a structure, and a city mainly in Europe is also a representation of the European structure that is really a pyramid. And I was asking myself, is the city itself multicultural, or some people living in the city multicultural? Considering that it's a structure and the European structure are very keen to keep some gates closed, how these different cultures are really communicating and being part of the structure of the city on a deeper level, not just walking around and listening to some African music. So my question was, how, at which level the city can be considered multicultural? If I go to a school, or if I'm in the so-called city center, I don't see people, racialized people, or not dominant people considered not being part of the city or come after of being part of the city. They really are, they contaminate and they made huge changes in the city itself, yes or no? So at which point the city is multicultural, where somebody's willing or not, they really carry more than one culture because of the movement of carry the culture that was from your that is from your parents, and the fact that you are constantly only informed about the dominant culture. So we definitely, somebody's definitely have more than one culture or mothers, but questions, I don't know. So how much is multicultural? Then another thing that came to me, I'm Italian, and in Italy there is this movement, well, it's European movement, so-called second generation, that's for me also connect to something else that Elena brought up, that is this strength and resilience, that there's some two things that are actually connected, where the focus is always posed in the subjects, in this case, immigrant subjects, where we are second generation. And personally, I don't identify myself as someone as second generation, because my question is second generation of what? I'm not an immigrant. I've never taken any plane, any boat, anything to be. I was just born there. So, and my mom is not born in Italy. So I'm at any time I'm a second generation, not second. And I think that focusing on the migration and putting the focus on this movement of the migration, we allowed Europe to get out of the responsibility of this first movement that was the colonization and the invasion of our countries. So for me, it's really important to stop looking at, if we want to start to talk more deep at a more deeper level and deconstruct some narratives, it's really important to stop talking about this new movement of immigrants, because even in Portugal, it's still keeping hiding ourselves from the history. Because if you look at the history of the 5th century, we were already here the same way they were there. So there's nothing new in this movement. So the longest we keep talking about second generation, focusing on the migration, we keep authorizing European politicians to not be responsible of the presence of immigrants in their countries and in the cities. And to talk and the connection, it's really was really shouting at me when I was looking and listening to the story of this musician Jones, brought by this artist from Turin. And it reminded me about when Kemi Seba is a is from Benin and French politician that once was in Rome in a cultural center called Baobab, where a lot of immigrants from Africa were living in, how do you call it? Tende. Le tende da campeggio, sorry, I'm missing this.
Yeah, tent. Okay, tent.
Okay, camping tents, yeah. And he was saying, we are crossing the desert, we are crossing the ocean with this illusion that being in Europe, we will have a better life, and we feel grateful to live in this condition that is not even surviving. So when I was listening to Jones, and it's not a critic to him, but it is just to reflect on the risk of this romanticization of some conditions, which is racial conditions, class condition, where we are resilient, we are strong, and being constantly strong and resilient, again, they responsibilize the government to take their responsibility on our bodies. So I was really listening to him, and I was thinking, and I was having this double feeling between this emotion of list. I found myself really emotional and listening to him, but at the same time I was feeling frustrated because I was thinking about his condition and this sense of austerity that from some, as Alexandra says, is for me was really the same. For us, being in the status of austerity is the condition of our life. But at the same time, we're grateful because, again, it's our responsibility to be immigrant or in one condition or another, and the governments, they don't have any responsibilities on us. So it doesn't matter if we live in conditions that are just about being surviving all the time. We just romanticize sometimes with this idea of somebody's being resilient and strong. We don't have to be strong, not anymore, because some people this system, European system, really needs to take care of us. It's time to take care of us. So, and it was a pity for me that I really, at least myself, I do my art with a political positioning. And I thought, for countries like Italy, we lost a chance to really show how in this multicultural city where people are needed to animate the presence of the ones who are going to the, for example, to the market, and they are really, and people are really happy to receive them and to see them playing in these moments like this pandemic situation we are living, where this social inequalities, they are becoming more and more clear. What happened to these bodies? Where are they? Who is taking care of them? So I think it would have been a good opportunity to denunciare. I'm sorry.
Now.
Yes, and think a little bit more, mainly having the opportunity to be in a space, to be presented in a space as the academia. It doesn't matter the format. I think it's important for the academic now to look at what we're bringing and not in how we're bringing some topics, but which topics are we bringing and what we should do and how we can act on what we're bringing. So thank you.
Thank you, Alessa. So I'm not sure how we do this. We'll, in a round table, sorry, I'm trying to not spotlight myself, but I am spotlighted. I don't want to take up all the time trying to answer all the questions. Maybe I'll just kind of say something quickly, but then Alexandris, Andres, if you want to jump in on anything, or anybody else wants to contribute, just kind of feel free. We try kind of loose format and see how it goes. So yeah, there were a lot of questions that I've been thinking a lot about, and I think everybody in the project has been thinking a lot about. So I'll just take a few about the structure and the knowledge production and what we do with this. That's a good question that I am not sure I can answer, in the sense that the idea of this was mostly the process. So in a way, the outcome of the webbook, it's useful. We'll present it, that the places would use it as a way of starting other conversations, but it was never meant to be, from a researcher's perspective, kind of the main refable, so kind of the main product that I then use for career advancements, let's say, but also not the most important thing, that there is a product at the end of this. And that's, for two reasons. One, because the idea was to establish dialogues that could go both ways, and so I was very happy to see how for at least some of the artists, they started processes of thinking, and that brought their projects also away from the questions I was asking, but that was a trigger for them to develop in some directions. And there was the same for me. I'm not sure this is the perfect format. It would have been nice to have occasions to meet. We never met all together in a room, for example, and that would have changed some of the dynamics, I think. So in terms of best practice, there's a lot to think about. But also that made me think of the structure. So we think about academia and how collaboration is seen. You're perfectly right. It's usually seen, okay, knowledge is produced by the researcher, and then the artists are just there to do nice drawings that make research accessible. And that's never been the case in this relationship, because the artists were always doing their own research, and they would bring in their own pre-existing commitments and ideas and agendas to this, which then, as you kind of implied, makes it more difficult to sell it back to academia as something, of value, because I can't say this is my product, right? And that's what's valued within the system. But I think the problem is of the system, and also of the system of financing, where I got the money for the project, and then I had a portion of the money that I could use for the artists. It would have been much more productive to have funding that actually funded us equally. So we could actually also structurally be on an equal footing in this research, instead of this being my project and then I try and involve somebody in a very part-time basis into. So that, for the future, that made me think it would be useful to try and think of projects that actually structurally put academics and artists at the same level, and that's actually then become co-production of knowledge. And that became very evident with the pandemics, where my income was safe, but that wasn't the same for the artists, because of the how the culture sector works and all the gigs being cancelled and so on. So that really kind of brought to light what was already obvious from the beginning, that we were participating in this, but with different standings. So that's a problem of collaboration. And then like in terms of the more substantive parts, a lot of what all of you brought up, both also Amin and Alessa in particular, was about problematizing the multicultural, which was there from the start of the project. And I thought quite a lot before using the term, because it comes loaded with loads of things. But then there are the other terms that I use. Then in writing, I tend to use difference, but it's very kind of vague. And then you have to specify what you're talking about there. But other terms that I use, like diversity or super diversity, interculturalism, and so on, they've become so marketized. So they're so much part of the city marketing, where multiculturalism becomes like the diversity is something to be consumed, and it's clear who's the consumer there, and who's producing the backdrop for consuming. So you go to the whatever ethnic restaurant, or you consume the lifestyle of diversity. So I had problems with that term, not because I don't take in the critique of also multiculturalism, implying that there are cultures, that they're defined, and but it seemed to me that it posed more questions that were more political. So once you say multicultural, then you have to say, okay, what's a culture? Who belongs, who doesn't? You ask all those questions: who represents? Where is the power? And it seemed that, as imperfect as that term is, at least brings in those political questions that are more easily swept under this, consumer culture carpet, with terms like diversity. So that was, one of the starting points. And in terms of what Amina was saying, in terms of kind of future directions, so the project is in its final year. And so we won't have within this project the possibility of developing those things, but those are definitely the threads that came out of doing this. And there was this collaboration was entirely experimental, meaning we started without an agenda, and we're trying to see what different people from different cities, from different experiences would bring to that. And one of the things that for me was important and also humbling is that I was coming in with so much of what I've read, what I thought, what I experienced, and I would have wanted something to be I don't know, more political or more. And then I had to take what came, and it gave me a lot of pause of having to say, okay, I'm trying to superimpose also my expectations of how people should talk about their cities and their experiences. And yeah, it would be nice as a second step or a future step to read, we can also kind of redo this, kind of build on top of this, instead of every time starting from scratch, this kind of conversations. So I'd be at least very interested in kind of following what comes out of the artists' ongoing production after this, and hopefully there'll be ways of re-engaging afterwards, with hopefully a more equitable funding structure. So that's my quick answers, thoughts. I don't know if either Alessandra and Andres want to kind of jump in and say what they thought.
Is Andre there? Because I don't see him. I don't know.
I'm here. Yeah.
Okay, you want to say something?
I don't know. Yeah, but you can go ahead and start first if you want. No.
Okay.
Right.
I found out a few of the questions pretty much interesting, and then interesting in the way that I would like to develop, of course. But the concept versus beauty. That's a funny thing, because I think that's what the cinema can bring as an expression, in art, is that of the concept, and the beauty of it is a way of expressing as an art that has the technology inherent to it. You have really the scientific parts together with the more abstract concepts there is in the human imagination, to bring it to life. And I think that's also a representation of these worlds coming together, the academic and the art world, if we see it that way, separate terms. It was for me really interesting also the way I became fond of Nietzsche in the process, and especially because of that. Actually, I felt I was starting to I don't know if you can say this in English, but nag her in getting this information. Oh, but you have information about this, information about that, but concrete, in terms of concrete knowledge, in the sense that I was feeling also that my approach is purely abstract in a sense, though it isn't, because it's my experiences also. So that's actually where pure knowledge resides. It's where you can experience, it's where you can really take as its knowledge. The other knowledge that you can't experience is mostly theory. So these levels and the subtleness of and the of differences of fields, I think it is also a space that is essential and vital for us to understand ourselves as human beings. And so the subjectivity of art, for example, when you are painting still life, and it's really, I don't know if you give a bit of attention to it, it's a process where you have an object, and like a lot of people are drawing, painting, or expressing somehow that object, and the outcome is truly different from like everybody. So in the sense that can mean that you can truly understand and respect the differences between people when you're like in touch with art. So art provides that, and when it comes to the academic field, I think throughout the years, this subjectivity has been more and more put it away, and bringing this experience as a book, this particular book, or this particular process that you bring art and academics, and also Aleza. I think Aleza represents one other field to this, which is activism, because you can do art and not being an activist, and the same thing with academics. So like these three things were put together in the book, and that's a triangle that I think it fits as a knowledge source that can really be wider. This is like the first intervention from the questions that came from the first intervention. I forgot, sorry, the name.
Elena.
Yes, Elena. Yes, pardon. Sorry for that. That's the first question. Second question, I think there's a thing here also, which is the opportunity of a concept that came to me through Azu Bogu, which is a great artist curator for me, in my perspective, and a good teacher. And he taught me that this concept of future fossils, and that we at the moment are responsible for creating what will be the archives of tomorrow, right? With people gonna look at us and see as references. And this is also a book that fits that you can call a category or way of doing things. And that's also a vital thing. And I think it goes to Elena's also question, the response to Elena's question, when what does this brings to the table also. And as Amina, I think Amina told something important for me, and that I've been nagging also Richie about it, is like the continuity and getting deeper into it, you know, like, yeah, but it would be nice to. It's not an easy process, as we talked about it. We talked about the financial issue, but also the conditions that we are living now. But I think those aspects are actually what can contribute to go deeper, and actually do not stop here. And it didn't. That's why we are here today having this meeting. And I think it will it will develop further, and it's already happening for this. I think we can go deeper in terms of the subject that we are approaching with the multicultural, and what it is and what it isn't, and because that I think is the basic notion that we can really grasp, and because it's a central point to deconstruct what we're living today. And it's actually what can explain a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, is this multiplicity, not only of cultures, and unless we see culture as something that you can do as an individual also, because I think that's the main aspect. Is like the multiplicity of an individual, what you have inside of you, that today is like the gathering of like millions of years that came before us. So when we talked here, I cannot just say, not just saying that I'm putting myself in a box when I say I'm a black man or an African man or a Portuguese, or, like we are all of this nowadays, There's always I was walking the street yesterday, then some people just pass, it's tell you a story. And at a certain moment, this Portuguese guy, and then someone say, there's always a Portuguese. It's like, yeah, you can say that there's always a Portuguese, there's always a Chinese, there's always an Italian. That's like, there's always someone that we can mention. And then there's different weights of that person, that identity, related to that story, that has been the narrative that is being told. So yeah, I think we can go deeper, and I would love, like with Farwa, I went further with the possibility of collaborating. I invited her to make something for an idea for the movie, and the same I felt with my other colleagues. You know, I think we could do something merging, like what we brought to the table, and that will be like something that could, I think, englobe better. Is that a word even? Englobe, but like get it around up of what we can bring to the table more clearly, actually, than just each one of us saying something as a part of the chapters. I think that yeah, I think we would deserve that also, you know, and keep on building that way. Then there's the actually issues that we like dealing and living today and breathing today, and I think Alessa brought more of that to the table as the angles that we're like putting onto, like when I think about second generation, when I think about my generation, which is maybe the second generation, what are we doing today, you know? And I see people writing books, putting knowledge outside, like some becoming doctors, some becoming like the prime minister of whatever. And it's my generation, you know, where people that were studying with me or that were getting drunk with me, and now we're in a position that we can actually do something for this world, because yeah, if I need something, I know the minister of culture of that country, because oh yeah, we studied together on that. It's strange because at the moment I feel it's really us. It's not anymore that that person that we're pointing. Oh, it's like blame him, blame her. You know, like yeah, they're doing like in a few years, like the ones they'll be governing this world will be like really us. And if we don't change ourselves today in a daily way, you know, of through the day, like gaining conscious of what we are and what we're aiming for, and what are our not wishes, but like our it's like in Portuguese, almejar. It's like what touches your soul as a human being, really what's really there, and not just even if you don't have a word for it, you know. I don't have to call it research anymore. Sorry, like what I do is what I do, you know. I can get another word for it, you know, and I'm actually thinking about it lately, because as a Google gave this to some people as an exercise, you know, just to, and it's funny, but it works to put everything into another realm of things, you know. This magical, I don't know if you call it in English like that, but we call it pensamento mágico. It's like magical thought, and we put that to children, you know, like, yeah, the children think like that, but you're grown up, so you can think about that, and that has been taken to the academic world also, you know, like you can't like misbehave like that, like, you know, it's, you know, don't talk like that, don't dress like that, and like don't be a kid anymore. And we need to be kids, man, because we're infantiles in terms of knowledge. We don't know about anything almost, you know. I don't know, it's infamous. So we are still kids. If we don't have the ability to play anymore, like we're gonna disappear. And I think most of what we're living today is a sign of that, as a manifestation. So yeah, let's be kids, let's be curious, stay, you know. It's, of course, we have to be mature about it, but like we're everything, you know, everything in the sense we're kids, but we're also grown-ups, and we are the elders, the ancient ones, you know. So it's a sense of responsibility, you know, the ability to have an answer, responsibility, and work on that.
Thanks. So Andres, you actually have a question in the chat as well. So if you want to, so it's Timofey, it's a long question, but the thrust of it is that multicultural means different things for different people in different contexts, and it's usually about othering. So there are the people that belong and the others that don't. And Alessa and Aka have been talking about their approach to challenging this kind of monocultural. So there is the people that belong, and he was wondering what you think your work does about that, this kind of challenging the monoculture in the context of Riga.
Well, I think it's a universal thing. People are the same everywhere. Doesn't matter what color of skin you have or your nationality. You always have the same problems. In case of Riga, we have, Latvians have problems with Russians, and the same problems with oppression and colonization. All these things are present, and also religious topics, homophobia, everything is present. In this sense, we are kind of similar, but I don't know, in terms of colors, we are not so diverse. Riga and Latvia is kind of, it's for us, it's a new thing that foreigners are coming, but it's a different context. Those who want to come to Latvia, mostly they're coming for studies. I was making a project about Indians living in Latvia and kind of their problems, and it's like everywhere, people are living in their small communities, and they don't want to kind of, they kind of want to integrate, but in the same time they kind of they don't want it, and society also doesn't do anything to help, and at some point it boils down to like big problems in society, but we didn't reach this point when we have problems with the same problems that appeared in Lisbon, in London, or other cities. The context is different, but people are the same everywhere, I think.
So we have a few minutes. I don't know if there is anybody else from the people in attendance who wants to ask anything, or Elena and Alessa want to kind of give a last word.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. There's a lot happening in my mind, of course, but I would say thank you for this moment. Unfortunately, I can't agree about being all the same, and the way also COVID and the consequences on some people and others made it clear. But yes, let's love each other.
Yeah, so I guess that's a kind of wrap up. Thank you moment. And yeah, kind of some of the kind of thoughts, ideas that they came up will have chances in kind of different moments to discuss again, hopefully. And I want to thank Amina, Lena, and Alessa for being kind of so kind to look through the book and give their thoughts, and Andres, Alessandre for kind of coming going through this process together. And yeah, hopefully there will be more to come. And thanks a lot, Timofey, for helping organizing this. And see everybody soon.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions. I hope it was also useful to engage in a practitioner academician conversations. And as you see, we have had a bit of an audience as well. It was insightful, I think, from different perspectives to see and hear of the work that happens across Europe. And just to support Lucia's point before, these conversations are rare, and it's important that they take place, because as Andrei said at the end, people are different. They might have different issues facing their everyday life, but ultimately the general concerns are similar. Thank you. Thank you for participating, and thank you, Lucia, for organizing this. And good luck to you all in your independent work there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.